Hi, I'm the Mythology guy, and I just read The Changing of the Gods by Anthony Miano. This is my first book review, and I gotta say, what a book! And it feels so good to say that. Like, this is a legit good book, and the story of how I came across it is kind of fun. The writer, Anthony Miano, is actually a fan of the channel. He reached out to me, he was really nice, he was like, hey, I know you like Greek mythology, I actually wrote a Greek mythology book, and it would mean a lot to me if you wanted to check it out and I could hear your thoughts on it. And I was like, sounds interesting, so I found the book on Amazon, and I read the description on Amazon, and I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. Let me tell you what it is. The basic premise here, Hades is the main character, first of all. Hades is my favorite god, as a lot of you know. And basically, the Trojan War has just happened. It's a big event in both Greek mythology and real history. And Hades is now receiving that huge load of the dead who has come in after the Trojan War. And Hades has always stayed uninvolved in the affairs of the gods and mortals. But he's finally reached his tipping point. Like, with the Trojan War and all the other horrible things that have happened, Hades has decided it's finally time for him to step up and start doing something about what his family has done and what a lot of very selfish mortals have done. And it's a really cool premise. Like, if you're a Greek mythology fan, I really think you're going to love this book because there are so many references to Greek stories and Greek characters and Greek events. Hell, even the way the book is structured is something I love. Every chapter starts with, like under the chapter number and the name of the chapter is a famous quote, and not even exclusively from like Greek poets. There's famous quotes from all kinds of people like the Dalai Lama and C.S. Lewis. Each quote applies to the chapter in some very poetic way, which is very cleverly done. And I really love that about this book. I was hooked right from the first chapter. When I was reading this book, when I bought this book, I did not originally plan to do a video on it. I planned to check it out for fun and then tell the writer what I thought of the book. But as I was getting into it, I was like, oh, I gotta talk about this. I got things to say about this. So yeah, the story is very impressively well written, especially I believe this is Anthony's first real book that he's written, and I think he really nailed it here. The characters are very interesting. If you I'm trying not to spoil stuff. I will not spoil anything in this video because I think you guys should check this out. If you're a big fan of Hades, I think you're going to love it. If you're a big fan of Greek mythology, you are at the very least going to find this very interesting and have a lot of fun with the references. If you're a big Hades Persephone shipper, you're going to love it. If you're a Lore Olympus fan, I think you're really going to like it. Now, let me talk about how the book is written. Now, the book is written with a bit of a mix of, the way people talked in old days, but it's also mixed in with some modern talk. You'll hear, characters say, oh, what did I do to piss you off, or something like that. So it's a little bit of everything in there. Don't expect complete Game of Thrones Charles Dance dialogue or anything like that, but it's still very well done dialogue. And a lot of the story is Hades confronting either gods or mortals who had business in the Trojan War and basically debating with them or asking them, can you justify the things you've done? And sometimes, of course, it goes exactly how you think it would go. The person can't justify what they've done, and it leads to some stuff I'm not going to spoil. However, though, what makes this book also very interesting is there are times where it doesn't go how you think it's going to go. There's a time when Hades, brings one of the people he's going to debate with, and he thinks he's got this guy dead to rights, and I thought he had this guy dead to rights. But as the chapter goes on, the guy does talk to Hades and really explain to him why he did what he did and why he came to the conclusions he came to. And it had both Hades in the book and me reading the book going, oh yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't considered that. And so yeah, things don't go the way I thought they would go. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting conversation, which is amazing because so many of these characters are mythological characters. He talks to not just mortals, he talks to mythical characters. And it's the personalities Anthony has given these characters are so in-depth and so interesting to learn about. sometimes it does feel like, how you would see like a conversation between some of the characters in Game of Thrones or something like that. And some of you are thinking, oh, is the book all like debate? I don't know if I'm into all debate. Oh, and there's some other stuff in there too. There are some characters getting their comeuppance. Like, if there are certain characters in Greek myth you hate, you're probably going to be satisfied to read about what happens to them, because Hades is not messing around in this book. And also, there's a pretty epic battle at one point. I am not going to ruin anything about it, but let's just say several mythical characters duke it the heck out in this book, and it's pretty fun to read. So yeah, like we've got good character writing and development. There is character development, by the way. There are characters who start out one way, and by the time all the debating is done, they've very much changed as characters and grown, which is very interesting to read. We've got some fun action, we've got some fun comeuppance that we get to like read about, like just so much good stuff in here. And there were character depictions that really surprised me. I'm not going to ruin it, but I will just say who it is. The way Ares is depicted in this book really surprised me. I was like not expecting him to be the way he was written in this, but it was such a like it really like I don't even know the right word to describe it, but it was so in-depth and interesting the way Ares talks about war and his connection to war. It was not what I was expecting at all. And, it probably has something to do with, as I read in the About the Author section, Anthony is like a former soldier himself, so that probably added a lot to that. And also, what's one thing I love about this book, there were times even though it has all this sad stuff in it and all this like in-depth stuff in it, this book can be pretty darn funny sometimes. There were at least 3 times when I had to put the book down because I was laughing pretty hard, and then I took my phone out and took a picture of like a quote in order to show to Wilda later. Yeah, there's some really good parts. I don't want to ruin it, but there's a scene where, I mean, if you've read Greek mythology, you all know this happens. Ares has just bonked Hephaestus' wife, and the way Hephaestus talks to him about it afterward is just, I was laughing really hard. And there's a part later where Hades is talking to a god who has forced himself on people. I won't say who it is, but you might be able to guess. And that person and that god says to Hades, well, I have the needs of a man. And Hades says, you're confusing needs with wants. I have run the underworld for so long, and never once has anyone come here because they died of sexual deprivation. It's just like, oh god, that's such a good line. So yeah, there's some legit funny lines in here. There's some really insightful stuff in here. Being like I said, so the only stuff I could say that would maybe ward people off is the fact that there is a mixture of like old style conversation and new style conversation. I personally found it fun since I'm a big Rick Riordan fan. And Rick Riordan's writing is very loved, so maybe you guys will enjoy it too. I did spot a couple of typos, but it's the man's first book. That's bound to happen. I don't know if he had an editor or not. I haven't asked him yet. But even with those, and there was one time when I thought there was a typo and I reread it, I'm like, oh no, that's just me messing up. That's not a typo. But I will tell you there are... No, this isn't a bad thing. Why am I saying it? Like, the violence in this book is sometimes described to the point where... Because sometimes it's happening to an immortal or a person who's already dead, and Anthony will even go so far as to explain, like let's say, just for an example, let's say a shade in the underworld gets punched in the face by a supernatural being. Anthony will describe to you exactly what would have happened to that guy if he was a regular human. Like, there will be paragraphs where it's like, had this guy been a living human, his entire rib cage would have shattered or something like that. I don't know if all of that is factually accurate, but with the amount of times it's written, it just makes me think, wow, Anthony really knows his stuff. So yeah, that was fun to read. Now, he does take some small liberties with mythology, as any writer does. You're always going to have to take some form of liberty in order to tell the story you want to tell. For example, a character who died a certain way in Greek mythology dies differently in this book. Or a character who got together with a certain someone in Greek mythology gets together with someone else in this book. Or, a certain thing that you get the idea. There's a few very small liberties taken. But what's also fun about this book is it will often address that there are multiple tellings of stories. This is something I talk about all the time. When a purist says, that's not what happened, they don't understand there are multiple tellings of stories. And this book even acknowledges that. There is a time when Hades is questioning someone and goes, all right, I need you to clear something up for me because I've heard multiple different reports of this story. And that happens a few times throughout. Also, I really love the way King Priam is written. King Priam is actually my favorite character in the Iliad. A lot of people are like, why isn't your favorite character Diomedes? And I'm just like, I just love Priam. I think he's a very wholesome, good king. And yeah, King Priam is in this, and the way he's written in this is pretty much exactly how I would picture he actually is. So that's pretty sweet. Yeah, and it gets, obviously, you can kind of figure what some of the debates are building to, since there's a certain character in Greek mythology who should probably be called out on all the horrible stuff that character has done. So you can pretty much tell what that's probably building to. But even so, the final chapter of this book, which I won't ruin, but it does go somewhere I wasn't expecting the book to go. But, a character does come in who it's very interesting to hear how the gods would interact with this character. I won't ruin it, but I wasn't expecting it, and when it started to happen, I was like, oh, are we doing this? This is interesting. How's this gonna go? And yeah, it was really cool. So yeah, I've really got almost nothing but good things to say about this book, and it feels so good to be able to do that, because I want to support, Anthony here. He's a fan of the channel. The passion in the writing is so clear here. It's so clear how into Greek mythology he is and how much of it he's read. Like I said, there are so many references to all kinds of Greek stories. You'll get little what's the word here? I think similes is the word, where it'll say stuff like, When he heard it, his jaw plummeted like Icarus, or something like that. Or you'll see stuff like, her relief was equal to that of Penelope when Odysseus finally returned. Or, the reaction in the room was similar to the reaction of the Greeks when they discovered Helen had been kidnapped. There's little lines like that. This feels so much like a book made for Greek mythology fans by a Greek mythology fan. And that's the kind of stuff that's so much fun to read. I've always wanted a story where Hades is the main character. I've always wanted a story where the Greek gods actually have to face consequences for the things they've done. And you could argue we have something like that in God of War and I guess Clash of the Titans and stuff. But this one's a lot more direct about it. And it's really interesting to hear the gods talk about it, talk to each other about the things they've done. And in some cases even explaining misunderstandings or how they came to the conclusion they did, or in some cases even express remorse for the things they've done. There was a part where Hades was talking to a certain other character, again, not going to spoil it, and telling that character, how do you justify doing this? And the character says, well, I couldn't have foreseen what would happen. Hades, just as you couldn't have foreseen what would happen when you did a certain something in the past as well. And Hades is like, I hadn't thought of that. And I, reading it, was like, I hadn't thought of that either. It's so interesting. So in a lot of ways, this is the kind of story I've wanted for a long time, and it's so good to see it. And some of the stuff in it I think would be really cool to see on the big screen someday. I know I'm dreaming big, but especially that really epic battle that occurs in the book, I think that would be amazing to see on the big screen someday. I really want to be honest. Yeah. But one other thing I should mention is, remember I said he does often address that there are multiple versions of certain stories, but obviously in the end he is going to have to pick which one is going to be the in-book canon version of the story. He very much picks, for example, Medusa has multiple versions of her story. He goes, in this one we're going with the Medusa was a victim version, which is fine. That's an official version. That's the Ovid telling. He does Oh, we do see appearances from Hercules, and I say Hercules because that's the name Anthony chooses to use in this book, and some of you may be going, why doesn't he use Heracles? Well, given how much Hercules hates Hera in this book, I think we can all go by the Marvel explanation, where it's like, yeah, he used to be called Heracles, but he wants to go by Hercules now because he wants to be less associated with Hera. I think that works out. But yeah, honestly, really fun book. Not too long, about 130 pages, so good read. It's available on Amazon. I will link it in the description of this video. Also, I found out Anthony has a TikTok for this book, so I will also link that in the description of this video. I can't recommend it enough. I'm going to put it on my Myth Books I Recommend list. Anthony, you did an absolutely amazing job with this book. I love it. I love it to death. I will be happy to put it on my shelf. I hope you write more books in the future. I'm happy to check them out. And yeah. But if any of you guys pick up this book, I'd really love to hear what your thoughts are on it. And what other myth books would you like me to do discussion videos of in the future? That's all I have to say for now. I am the Mythology Guy. This is an awesome book, and I don't know how to end videos. Bye-bye.